We're heading up very quickly to 7 o'clock this Tuesday morning. Let's talk about the US Treasury, which has identified an ISIS cell in South Africa. It says the group is raising funds for the terror network, now imposing sanctions on members of that cell. So let's unpack what this all means for us as a country and how concerned we should be. Extremism and political violence expert Jasmine Opperman joining me on the phone this morning. Jasmine, good to be with you. When you see reports like the US now identifying an ISIS cell, how concerning is that for you? Do alarm bells start going off?
As we've said with the alert, one should not ignore alerts. If I look at the names now being listed and the companies, and it all goes back to the Verulam incident we had 2016, the Mayfair house raid, the Mayfair incidents, I'm starting to ask serious questions about the actual intelligence at hand incriminating these individuals. The court cases were scrapped from the roll. There was no evidence found in terms of proceeding with court cases based on the terrorism accusations. The U.S. alert seems to be relying or be focused specifically on one individual, and that is Huma, running a so-called Islamic State cell that they are projecting as being highly organized. Well, in the lack of facts, in the lack that they are still allowed or that the court cases have been actually taken off the roll, I am starting to ask questions about the actual involvement of these individuals in terrorism.
So you would, if I understand correctly, Jasmine, you're saying that it may not be the case due to a lack of evidence?
The lack of evidence that was provided, yes.
So when we now look at the concerns around, because we have to start tying things in, don't we, to this situation with sanctions. A couple of weekends ago, I know we had you on air talking about this, the US terror alert. Luckily, nothing came of that, and the ongoing issue up in Cabo Delgado. How concerned should we be as a country about extremism and violence in our country?
No, we cannot ignore the reality. I've said that in the previous interview. Cabo Delgado has announced the Islamic State in its most brutal form. We cannot ignore our vulnerability via organized crime in terms of illegal financial flows. And this is just another indication of how the world is looking at South Africa and how they are asking questions about our ability to counter terrorism. And these accusations and these activities cannot be taken lightly.
And just very briefly, as I say goodbye to you, Jasmine, when we're talking about intelligence, unfortunately, our intelligence community not very popular after the KZN uprising last year. How much do you trust our intelligence versus, for example, the US or international intelligence on an issue like this?
In terms of our capability to deal with terrorism and extremism, looking at where we are with our intelligence services in a process of transformation, I simply do not have the trust in the intelligence service to be able to work this field at a level that will enable us to put proactive intelligence on the table.
No, that's the very concerning point that I think many people agree with. Jasmine, I appreciate your time very briefly joining us this morning for your thoughts. Jasmine Opperman, security consultant specializing in extremism and political violence here on ENCA as the US places sanctions on targeted members of an Islamic State operating here in South Africa. But there's a lot of information that we still need to get on that. You would have seen